Netanyahu is standing at a crossroads, and Saudi Arabia just drew a red line in the sand. While the Israeli Prime Minister considers enacting partial sovereignty over Judea and Samaria after the UK, Australia, and Canada recognized a Palestinian state, the kingdom has delivered a stark warning that could shatter Trump's Middle East ambitions. This isn't just about territorial disputes anymore. It's about the future of the Abraham Accords, regional stability, and whether Trump's peace through strength doctrine can survive the reality of Middle Eastern politics. The crisis began when Western nations made a coordinated move that sent shockwaves through Jerusalem. The UK, Australia, Canada, and Portugal all recognized Palestinian statehood within hours of each other, creating what Israeli officials are calling a tsunami of international pressure.
Deeply engaged in seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. Unfortunately, Hamas has repeatedly rejected reasonable offers to make peace. We can't forget October 7th. Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. But instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. We have to stop the war in Gaza immediately. We have to stop it. We have to get it done. We have to negotiate, immediately have to negotiate peace. We got to get the hostages back.
The recognition came despite Netanyahu's fierce opposition and his government's warnings that such moves would only embolden terrorist organizations. Speaking at international forums, leaders have emphasized that recognizing Palestine unilaterally would essentially reward Hamas for its October 7th attacks, a position that has found support among many Western conservatives but has been rejected by an increasing number of nations seeking to break the diplomatic deadlock. Netanyahu's response was swift and defiant. He declared that no Palestinian state would be created west of the Jordan River and promised a strong Israeli response after his return from Washington. But here's where Trump's Middle East strategy starts to unravel.
Railing as much against climate change and green action, which the United Nations does quite a bit of work to promote among its members, but also on immigration, specifically on migration, saying that the United Nations was created new problems. He called uncontrolled migration the #1 political problem, said that they were sponsoring an invasion into Western nations, funding an assault on Western nations. Those were the words that Donald Trump used when he was discussing migration. He came back to that theme repeatedly throughout the hour or so that he was speaking there. It was, alongside with climate action, the two repeated elements that he spoke about. And this was a steadfast rejection of the work that the UN does.
The American president has found himself caught between his desire to project strength on the world stage and the complex realities of Middle Eastern politics. His recent speeches have revealed a growing frustration with international bodies and their approach to regional conflicts, particularly their stance on migration and climate policies, which he views as undermining Western sovereignty. Saudi Arabia has reportedly sent a confidential message to Israel warning that any move to annex territory in the occupied West Bank would carry major implications in all fields. The kingdom didn't mince words. Annexation would shut the door on normalization with Arab states and could fundamentally damage the Abraham Accords that Trump considers one of his greatest foreign policy achievements. The Saudi warning goes beyond diplomatic rhetoric. Sources suggest the kingdom could close its airspace to Israeli flights, airspace that was opened in 2022 as a gesture of warming relations. They could also end the under-the-radar security and trade cooperation that has been quietly developing between the two nations. For a country that relies heavily on regional partnerships for its security, this would be a devastating blow to Israel's strategic position. Trump finds himself caught between competing pressures that threaten to tear apart his Middle East coalition. On one side, his closest ally Netanyahu faces intense domestic pressure from coalition partners like Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who are demanding immediate sovereignty moves. Smotrich declared that the days of the British Mandate are over and called for sovereignty over the homeland of the Jewish people in Judea and Samaria. On the other side, Trump's Arab partners, the very nations he needs for his broader regional peace plan, are drawing hard lines against Israeli expansion, The UAE has joined Saudi Arabia in warning that annexation is a red line, and sources close to Trump are reportedly indicating that Washington does not favor such moves. It's the last thing they need, one source said, especially after Israel's controversial September strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar that already strained regional relationships. The timing couldn't be worse for Trump's ambitious peace framework. According to Israeli media reports, Trump and Netanyahu have been working on a comprehensive plan that would expand the Abraham Accords to include Saudi Arabia, the ultimate prize in Middle Eastern diplomacy. This plan envisions ending the Gaza war, securing the release of hostages, and creating a new regional order with Israel at its center. But Saudi normalization has always come with a price: meaningful progress toward Palestinian statehood. Netanyahu's dilemma exposes the fundamental contradictions in Trump's approach. The Israeli prime minister needs to satisfy his far-right coalition partners who view Palestinian statehood as a security threat and an undeserved reward after October 7th. Yet he also knows that alienating Saudi Arabia would end any hope of the historic normalization deal that could secure his political legacy. Recent polls show that 71% of Israelis oppose establishing a Palestinian state in the West Bank, while 68% support extending Israeli sovereignty over these areas. The pressure is mounting from all directions. Channel 12 reported that Saudi officials will meet with Trump on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly to discuss Gaza and post-war scenarios. These conversations will likely determine whether Trump's Middle East strategy survives or collapses under the weight of irreconcilable positions. The kingdom has made clear that any form of annexation is a red line for the international community that bears serious consequences. France has joined Saudi Arabia in this warning, with both nations issuing a joint statement declaring that any form of annexation is a red line and calling for an end to all settlement activities. German officials have also stated there must be no further annexation of Palestinian territories. The international coalition against Israeli expansion is growing, putting Trump in the uncomfortable position of having to choose between his Israeli ally and virtually everyone else. What makes this crisis particularly dangerous for Trump is that it threatens to unravel the Abraham Accords entirely. The UAE is reportedly considering downgrading its relations with Israel if Netanyahu proceeds with annexation. This would mark a serious blow to the 2020 U.S. brokered deal that Trump has consistently promoted as a foreign policy victory.
I ended 7 wars, and in all cases they were raging with countless thousands of people being killed. This includes Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, the Congo and Rwanda, a vicious, violent war that was, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, and Armenia and Azerbaijan. It included all of them. No president or prime minister, and for that matter, no other country has ever done anything close to that. And I did it in just 7 months. It's never happened before. There's never been anything like that. I'm very honored to have done it. It's too bad that I had...
The president has often boasted about his ability to broker peace deals that others deemed impossible, claiming to have ended multiple conflicts that had persisted for decades. The prospect of seeing his signature Middle East achievement collapse would be a devastating political blow for a president who has staked his reputation on deal-making success. The Qatar strike has added another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. Israel's September 9th attack on Hamas-linked otters in Doha, the first such attack on Qatari soil, has sparked regional outrage and calls for a collective response. Qatar's prime minister warned that the entire Gulf region is at risk and accused Netanyahu of leading the region into chaos. This has made Arab leaders even more wary of appearing to reward Israeli aggression through normalization deals. Netanyahu's strategy appears to be one of calculated delay. Sources suggest he's considering only partial sovereignty over the Jordan Valley, a more limited approach than the sweeping annexation his coalition partners demand. This partial plan is based on the expectation of bipartisan U.S. support and broad Israeli consensus. But even this limited move could trigger the Saudi warnings and derail normalization prospects. The economic implications are staggering. Saudi Arabia and the UAE represent massive potential markets for Israeli technology and innovation. The Kingdom's Vision 2030 Economic Transformation Plan could offer Israeli companies unprecedented opportunities in sectors from renewable energy to artificial intelligence. Losing access to these markets would cost Israel billions in potential revenue and technological partnerships. Trump's frustration with the situation became apparent when he reportedly expressed anger over Israeli strikes that threatened to disrupt his Iran ceasefire announcement. During a phone call demanding that Netanyahu halt aircraft operations, Trump questioned how the Israeli leader would disrupt their agreed strategic peace framework over a minor Iranian missile. This reveals the tension between Trump's desire for regional stability and Netanyahu's domestic political needs. The broader strategic picture shows Trump's Middle East policy caught in a web of contradictions. His support for Israel's security needs conflicts with his desire for Arab normalization. His peace through strength doctrine assumes that military success can create diplomatic opportunities, but the regional response to Israeli actions suggests the opposite may be true. Arab leaders are interpreting Israeli military operations as evidence that Netanyahu has no genuine interest in peace. Congress is adding another layer of pressure. Republican lawmakers have been urging Trump to back Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, with representatives like Claudia Tenney calling it Israel's legitimate right. The Friends of Judea and Samaria caucus has sent letters supporting annexation and praising Trump for lifting sanctions on Israeli settlers. This creates domestic political pressure for Trump to support moves that would anger his Arab partners. The Palestinian Authority has tried to position itself as a moderate alternative, with President Mahmoud Abbas making historic commitments to peaceful settlement and rejecting violence. France and Saudi Arabia have praised these commitments and called for PA reforms, including scrapping the pay-to-slay system and holding free elections. But Netanyahu's government remains skeptical of Palestinian intentions, especially after October 7th. Time is running out for all parties involved. Netanyahu faces the immediate challenge of responding to Western recognition of Palestinian statehood without triggering Saudi retaliation. Trump needs to find a way to keep his Middle East coalition together while managing competing demands from Congress and regional partners. The Saudis must balance their desire for regional stability with their commitment to Palestinian rights. The next few weeks will be crucial. Netanyahu's planned meeting with Trump in Washington could determine the future of U.S.-Israel relations and the broader Middle East peace process. If they can find a formula that satisfies Israeli security concerns while avoiding the annexation red lines, Trump's regional strategy might survive. If not, the collapse of the Abraham Accords and the end of Saudi normalization prospects could mark the failure of Trump's most ambitious foreign policy initiative. What's clear is that Trump's transactional approach to Middle East diplomacy is facing its greatest test. The assumption that military strength and economic incentives could overcome decades of conflict is being challenged by the reality of deep-seated political and religious divisions. Saudi Arabia's ultimatum represents more than just opposition to Israeli expansion. It's a fundamental rejection of the idea that peace can be imposed from above without addressing core Palestinian grievances. The irony is that Trump's desire to be seen as a successful dealmaker may ultimately undermine his ability to make deals at all. By raising expectations for a comprehensive Middle East peace agreement, he has created a situation where partial solutions appear inadequate and failure carries enormous political costs. Netanyahu's consideration of partial sovereignty reflects this dilemma. It's too much for Arab partners, but not enough for Israeli hawks. As this crisis unfolds, the fundamental question remains whether Trump's Middle East strategy was ever realistic or simply an ambitious gamble that was bound to fail when confronted with the intractable realities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Saudi Arabia's red line may be the moment when that gamble finally comes due, forcing Trump to choose between his Israeli ally and his broader Middle Eastern ambitions.
This is most surely the end of the post-war era is over. That chapter of the book is closed. We are in a new era in kind of, international history.
Yeah.
The post-World War II era is done. And, Donald Trump in 2016 announced it. In 2025, he confirms it.
The decision he makes could define not just his presidency, but the future of peace efforts in one of the world's most volatile regions.